Welcome back. It's Saturday morning, I think. It's pretty bloody cold. I've found the power limit for something on this. It's not the clutch. Previous videos, it must have been just a faux pas on my behalf and did not tighten up some bolts enough. They just weren't tight enough, and with a bit of use, they just backed away and the clutch started to slip. No big deal. Sounds terrible, right? Everyone's like, oh, the clutch will explode, but it runs on quite a big spigot, and what would actually happen is it would just stop driving before it could come away from that spigot. So it just meant that I missed out on some roll racing that I wanted to do, which sucks, but we had fun in the ute anyway. But anyway, the thing that I've reached the power limit of is actually the chassis. Way back in the day, I should have come prepared with a torch. It's not very good lighting under there, is there? Hold fire. Slightly better. Way back in the day, all this, you can actually see it right here. And you can pause on that and have to take a closer look, or I'll show you closer in a second. All this was all designed and built for an east-west configuration. So you'll see my shadow because I put light down there, see? Engine this side, gearbox that side, prop shafts basically where they are, so the end of the gearbox was kind of out here. This actual subframe was set up originally for that, and it's all been modified to change it into a south-north, I'm going to call it, configuration, because the engine's backwards instead of north-south. Anyway, and put the diff in there and all that sort of carry on. Now these chassis rails that are up here, these are very thin. They're only, I might be able to dent that. Yeah, I can dent that. Watch this. Boing, boing, boing. It's only 1 mil. Because all I had to do was just basically support the weight of the back end there. There's 4 bolts with riv nuts, and everyone's like, oh no, riv nuts, oh no, riv nuts. There's another 2 that go in sideways there. So you'd actually have to shear those off before you could put direct tensile load on those. And I actually looked up the specs and what they will hold anyway, so I knew all about that. I've forgotten what it is. But it's actually a lot more than what a lot of people think. Meanwhile, on the front, we're on the original factory suspension mounts for this big part. I need to look at this a little bit closer on the other side in case it has cracked there, based on what we're going to see in a second. This was all changed through here to make room for this configuration instead of the east-west configuration. This has been repaired because I made a small faux pas on the skid pan, and I put that wheel into the wall at quite a bit of speed and punched all this in sideways and busted the suspension arm and all that sort of stuff. So that's all been fixed. Now what's happening is, when I'm an idiot and try and do big skids at autocanas and things like that, the front of the diff can't go anywhere. There's a massive big torque plate across there and solid mounted and all that sort of stuff. Big bolts, big bushes and everything. We need to have a look and make sure there's no fatiguing or cracking going on up there, but there won't be. So that goes nowhere. That's rock solid, more or less. This end here then tries to, when you accelerate, the diff wants to do this, right? Because it's trying to turn the wheels that way. If the wheels don't move, the diff wants to climb up at the front. If it can't climb up at the front, because it's all really nicely mounted, it'll try and push the back down. Okay, so that's got the factory, it's only a single stud on there. We need to look closely at this and see whether this is cracked as well, because they do break. It doesn't look like it has. So that stud holds onto that. That adapter goes through there, that bolt. That can actually pivot, and then it's pulling down on this big tube here, which is all attached, and you know, this is all nice and strong, so it won't go anywhere. But what it's done is it's actually twisted that chassis rail. This is still level. If you put spirit level on this, that's still exactly where it needs to be. It looks like it's twisted down because of optical illusions, but that's perfectly horizontal. It's pulled the chassis rail down on the inside edge, twisted the whole thing all the way right back to here. This is actually down from where it should be. You can feel it, you might not be able to see it, but it's twisted that whole back end and pulled all that down. And then to do that, they must have put a little bit of twist on this whole subframe arrangement. So we're talking a crap ton of force Like I say, we need to look very closely up here and see what's happened there. There might be some, I don't think it has, but there could be some cracking or distortion or whatever has happened around this point. Yeah, actually, I think it's bent just there. It is, I can feel it. So it's bent that tab up towards the chassis to allow this plate here to bend, to allow this corner way back here to come back down. So there you go, something for me to fix. Yay. So, you don't have to be very smart to see that there's a whopping great big dent there. Now that hasn't been there before. There's been a small-ish dent there in the past from when I smacked it into the wall, as I just said earlier, because tyres here, right, top of the wheel and everything, it's come through. It literally crashed into the outside edge of that and gave that some distortion. I mean, it's probably, that has weakened it and allowed it to bend a little bit more, but it's certainly bent a lot more than what it has been before. So yeah, that looks like daylight along there. The sealant's let go. I've got too much light on it. There you go. The sealant's pulled away from there and cracked the paint and everything. So that's actually quite fresh. That's purely from use and abuse. Massive clutch dumps trying to do big skids at the Gymkhana thingy. So just finding the limits of what my engineering that I did way back in the day, what it can handle. And I mean, it's not fallen apart, but it's definitely falling apart. It couldn't handle that. So interesting. Right, I wonder if I get a strop between here and here, whether we're going to be able to pull that back up to where it needs to be and then start repairing. Carnage, destruction, destroy. So you can see we did tear one riv nut completely out of the chassis, but the others are still holding. And to be fair, we've actually, I gotta figure out which corner it is because it's not in the car now. We bent that plate in the process. So yeah, we tore a riv nut out, but look at the state of the plate. 3mm thick plate. So it was basically at the point it was going to start tearing the chassis to pieces anyway. Looks like I didn't put enough paint inside there, eh? I wonder if that's been, the way that's got rust staining there, it looks like that's been completely 100% full of water at some point. That's not good. That's not good at all. And then this side, it looks fine to me. Doesn't have anywhere near the stress on it, right? But we might as well beef that up a little bit. This side here, she's massively bowed down in this general area, and it's pulled this as well. You might see it on the camera. I can definitely see it in person, but that's all, bash it back into shape. Like, it was designed to be a bit weak in this corner anyway, in case they backed it into something. I didn't want it to crinkle up all the way through to the front of the car. So this was all a bit sort of huckery, looks unfinished, but it's all part of just leaving it with a little bit of give, so to speak. I might as well take that strut out, take that carbon fibre piece out of there and chop that whole piece out, start again. Easy. I took the diff out as well, might as well, and the exhaust. We now have a bucket load of room to work, no problems at all there. Well, not real problems, right? Nothing to be concerned about. You can really see how much of a hard time this stuff all got back at this corner. That should be flat. That, believe it or not, should be flat. So this whole thing is bent. You can actually kind of get a view for it from there. She's not good, so let's just chop that out after lunch and sort it out. Now the shaft comes through about here somewhere, which is why there's a dent in there, because the CV boot was actually very close to that, so I just gave it a bit of clearance. So we might actually shift this, bring it back this way a little bit to give it a bit more guts. We certainly well, I'm certainly going to increase the material thickness. That was a thicker piece, I think. But what's here, this is flimsy. This was never really designed to have that much torque on it just there. And as you can see, I didn't like it. Could just hit it with a hammer and get it a lot straighter. Yeah, let's do that. Ta-da! Some tweaking required, but there's our new section that goes through there. Can you see in the inside? No, you can't see in the inside. 1.6. Made from 2 pieces, whereas the other ones were made from 3. So there was a bit bent around here that stopped, and there was a bit bent around there from the top that stopped. Actually 4 pieces, and there was a piece on each side that was stitched on. So this is faster to build and should be a bit stronger. Probably actually needs to come up a little bit in this corner, which I will do with a trusty old block of wood, etc., and get this alignment a little bit nicer and weld it. Now, I know people are going to lose their shit because I'm butt welding this onto here, but as I said earlier, I'm going to put a better gusset arrangement in here, and I'll probably just plate over the top of that as well, just to make it nice, given what it is. It needs to be bloody strong, apparently. So, yeah. It's 6 o'clock. I'm way past had enough of this for today. It's getting there. So, I mean, that looks much nicer, even without paint on it. It's good without any wrinkles and stuff. So, yay. Splice that onto there. A little bit nicer than the original design. Much more rigid. That side there, that's actually quite wobbly on the top there as well. And it has done the same thing, but to a lesser degree. So the chassis rails pulled down on this inside edge here. Done that, so we're up for doing that one too. So I might do that tomorrow. Now this section across the back here, it's been very nastily hacked up. That had because I can't do a complete closed box, right? Well, without welding it together. So this one was done sort of like a C section, so there was a gap, maybe 10-15 millimeters all the way along, the whole way along there. And this piece that's now welded on here, that came all the way down to the bottom and actually had rivets. There's some rivet holes here. I didn't think this would be having a lot of force gone through it, but basically all the rivets had blown out. So I guess with all the force coming down on the back of the subframe here and the chassis rails trying to twist, it's put the load through this structure here and blowing all the rivets out on that, which was interesting. So that's now, it's a bit hard to get the light right, but that's fully welded onto that top section, and I'm going to get a piece folded tomorrow that'll come around here, and we'll attach that to that firmly, and that will stiffen that whole lot up a lot. The other side here, seeing as all this is not actually that bad, I may approach it slightly differently. I might just chop the sides off it and fold up the piece and stitch it on in here. Just panel beat the top straight. Although that would leave that being 1 mil and the rest of it being 1.6, which probably be okay on that side. This side where the diff is where all the force is, so it needs to be more better. Thinking about some sort of doofer up here. How far do you go? But yeah, something to try and stop this without destroying that in the process. That's what that's about. That's 1.6 as well, so that's attached to the strut tower, and it just gives it a bit of guts to try and stop this end bending down where it could have before. Right, probably enough for this one. Some of you will be waiting for some content, so I'll smash this up. See in the background there, do you know what that's off? There's some more clues. Yeah, there's a bit of stuff there and it's all blue. See if you can figure it out. Thanks for watching. Cheers, boy.